Hospitals are supposed to be places of healing, compassion, and safety. When my father was admitted after a severe health complication, our entire family was clinging to hope and praying for his recovery. He had been hooked up to machines, fighting every single day with a resilience that amazed everyone. The medical team was doing everything possible, and though things looked grim, we refused to give up. The last thing any of us expected was that trouble would come not from his illness, but from a woman who had nothing to do with our family, our lives, or even his medical care. That woman was none other than Karen, the nightmare of our homeowners association. For years, Karen had been a thorn in our side. She wasn't just your typical HOA busybody who complained about grass length or the color of your shutters. No, Karen had taken it upon herself to police the entire neighborhood like she was some kind of self-appointed dictator. She fined families for leaving bicycles on their porches, demanded cars be washed twice a week, and even tried to stop kids from selling lemonade, claiming it violated community commerce rules. But what she did at the hospital went beyond anything we could have imagined. It was a quiet afternoon in the intensive care unit. My mother and I had been sitting by my father's bedside, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest with every mechanical breath. The monitors beeped in rhythmic patterns, the sound both comforting and haunting. Nurses moved in and out, checking vitals, adjusting medications, and offering us small smiles of reassurance. Suddenly, the door creaked open. At first, I thought it was another nurse or maybe one of Dad's doctors. But when I looked up, my jaw nearly dropped to the floor. It was Karen. Her perfectly ironed blouse, oversized sunglasses perched on her head, and that familiar smug expression made her presence unmistakable. My mom immediately stiffened, her hand clutching mine like she needed to anchor herself in reality. "What are you doing here?" my mom demanded, her voice low but sharp. Karen didn't answer right away. She strode into the room like she owned it, her heels clicking on the sterile tile floor. Her eyes locked on my father, lying motionless on the bed, and then she turned to us with an expression that was equal parts pity and arrogance. "I heard about his condition," Karen finally said, folding her arms. "And I think it's time we had a serious conversation about letting go." My heart skipped a beat. "Excuse me?" I asked, sure I'd misheard her. Karen sighed, as if we were the unreasonable ones. "He's hooked up to all these machines. It's not fair to him. It's not fair to the community either. People are already talking. It's draining resources." I blinked, completely dumbfounded. Did she just say it's not fair to the community? "This is a hospital," my mom snapped, her voice rising. "This has nothing to do with the HOA or the neighborhood." But Karen only raised her chin higher. "Everything has to do with the neighborhood. He hasn't been paying dues while he's been in here. And if he lingers like this, there will be complications with property ownership, taxes, the bylaws." "Are you insane?" I exploded, leaping to my feet. "You don't get a say in my father's life. This is between our family and his doctors." But Karen wasn't done. She stepped closer to the bed, her eyes narrowing at the machines. And then, with the most horrifying audacity I had ever seen, she reached toward the ventilator tubing. My mother gasped, lunging forward to block her. "Don't you dare touch that." Karen froze for only a moment, then straightened her back with a fake calm. "Someone has to make the tough choices. You're too emotional to see reason. I'll handle it." The room felt like it had dropped 10 degrees. My hands balled into fists, my pulse pounding in my ears. This wasn't just HOA nonsense anymore, this was a matter of life and death. At that very moment, a nurse entered the room carrying a chart. Her eyes immediately darted to the tense scene, my mother standing protectively between Karen and my father, me looking like I was about to explode, and Karen with that entitled stance that said she thought she was in charge. "Is everything okay in here?" the nurse asked carefully, her voice calm but alert. "No, it's not," my mom said firmly, pointing at Karen. "This woman is not family. She's not supposed to be here. She's trying to interfere with my husband's care." The nurse's eyes widened slightly before she set the chart down. I'm going to have to ask you to leave immediately. Only authorized family and medical personnel are allowed here." Karen scoffed. "Don't you talk to me like that. I have every right to be here. Someone has to make responsible decisions. Clearly, this family is letting their emotions cloud their judgment." By now, I could feel my blood boiling. The audacity was beyond belief. My father, lying helpless in that bed, fighting for his life, and this woman wanted to pull the plug, because it inconvenienced her HOA agenda. The nurse pressed the call button on the wall. Within moments, 2 hospital security officers appeared at the doorway. And that was when I knew, this wasn't just going to be another Karen tantrum. This was about to escalate into something much bigger. The tension in the hospital room was unbearable. The rhythmic beeping of my father's heart monitor was the only steady sound, yet it felt drowned out by the rapid pounding of my own heartbeat. My mother stood rigidly in front of my father's bed, protecting him like a lioness shielding her cub. Karen, however, remained undeterred. Her posture was stiff, her nose slightly tilted upward, and her eyes locked on the ventilator with an unnerving determination. The 2 hospital security officers stepped inside, their presence instantly commanding authority. One was tall and broad-shouldered, his voice calm but firm. The other, younger but no less serious, placed a hand near his radio as though expecting things to get messy. The taller officer said, addressing Karen, "We're going to need you to step out of this room immediately. Only immediate family members are allowed in the ICU." Karen turned toward him slowly, lips pressed together in exaggerated disbelief. Then, in her signature condescending tone, she replied, "Excuse me. Do you even know who I am?" The officer didn't flinch. "I don't, and it doesn't matter. You need to leave, now." Karen scoffed, shaking her head, as if she couldn't believe the incompetence of everyone around her. "I'm on the board of the neighborhood HOA. This man," she pointed dramatically at my unconscious father, "is a homeowner in my community. That gives me a responsibility, a duty, to oversee matters when the family isn't making sound decisions." My jaw dropped. She was actually saying this out loud. "You're not his doctor," I said, stepping closer, my hands trembling with anger. "You're not his family. You're not even a friend. You're just the neighborhood tyrant who thinks she runs the world." Karen whipped her head toward me, her eyes narrowing. "Oh, don't be dramatic. You're young, you don't understand. Sometimes you have to make the hard choices, the ones nobody else is brave enough to make." The nurse, who had been standing by quietly, finally interjected. "Pulling a patient off life support is not your choice to make. That decision belongs to his medical power of attorney and his doctors, not the homeowners association." Karen waved a dismissive hand, like the nurse's words were nothing more than annoying background noise. Then she took a step toward the bed again, her eyes laser-focused on the ventilator. That was the breaking point. The younger security guard immediately moved, stepping between Karen and the machines. That's enough," he said sharply. "If you touch that equipment, it's a felony. You'll be arrested." Karen froze, but only for a moment. Her lips curled into a smug smirk. "Arrested? For trying to save a family from years of medical bills. For saving this community from uncertainty. You wouldn't dare." My mom's face was pale, her hands trembling as she clutched my father's arm. I could see the mixture of fear and fury in her eyes, and it mirrored everything I was feeling. "Get her out of here," I demanded, my voice shaking but loud. The taller officer nodded. Last warning. Either walk out with us now, or we'll have to escort you out." Karen's response was to stomp her foot, like a spoiled child. "This is ridiculous. I will not leave until someone listens to reason." And then, in a move that shocked everyone in the room, she lunged again toward the ventilator. The younger guard reacted instantly, blocking her with his arm and physically guiding her backward. Karen shrieked, her voice echoing down the sterile hallways of the ICU. "Get your hands off me. I have rights. I'm acting in the best interest of the community." The nurse quickly moved to reassure my mom, while also checking the machines to make sure nothing had been tampered with. My stomach twisted as I realized how close Karen had been to actually pulling something loose. Security wasted no more time. Each of them took an arm and began marching Karen toward the door. She kicked and flailed, yelling at the top of her lungs. "This is abuse. I'll sue this hospital. I'll sue the HOA for not backing me up. I'll sue everyone. You people don't understand. This man's property will affect the entire neighborhood if he stays like this." Her voice carried down the hall, drawing curious stares from nurses and even other families. It was humiliating, enraging, and heartbreaking all at once. The officers finally pushed her out of the ICU doors, one of them speaking into his radio for backup. For a moment, the room fell into silence again, only the steady beeping of the monitor and my father's breathing filling the air. But I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to back down, even when logic, law, and morality were against her. And sure enough, minutes later, we heard the distinct echo of raised voices from down the corridor. Karen was at it again, this time, with hospital administrators. The ICU doors clicked shut behind Karen, but the echo of her screeching didn't stop. Even through the thick walls, we could still hear her voice rising and falling like a banshee unleashed. My mother sank into the chair beside my father's bed, her face pale and trembling. She clasped my father's hand tightly, whispering, "I can't believe she tried to. Oh my God." Her voice broke, but she steadied herself quickly. I stood frozen for a moment, my fists clenched so tight my knuckles ached. "She's completely insane," I muttered. "She actually tried to touch Dad's ventilator." The nurse gave a sympathetic nod while checking the machines again. "He's fine. Nothing was disconnected." Security got to her in time. She glanced at the closed door, frowning. "But something tells me this isn't the end of it." And she was right. Not 5 minutes later, the muffled sounds outside grew sharper. Karen was arguing with hospital administrators in the corridor, her shrill voice cutting through the usually hushed environment. "You don't understand," she barked. "If he doesn't recover, the HOA will have to deal with his unpaid dues and the transfer of property. That affects everyone. I am authorized to make decisions in these matters." A man's calm, professional voice, probably one of the administrators, replied, "You are not listed on any medical documentation. You have no legal rights over this patient. Please lower your voice." Karen's reply was a loud scoff. "Legal rights? I am the law in my neighborhood. Do you people even know the mess this will cause when he passes? The bylaws clearly state." The younger security guard, who had escorted her out earlier, stepped back into our room briefly. "Stay here with your father," he said firmly. "We're handling her. But I'll be honest, she's pushing her luck. If she doesn't calm down, we'll have no choice but to call the police." "Do it now," I snapped. "She's a danger to my dad." He gave me a measured look. "We're following protocol. But don't worry, We're not letting her near this room again. Meanwhile, the shouting outside only grew louder. Karen's voice rose to a fever pitch. If you don't let me make the decision, then you're complicit in keeping him alive unnecessarily. This hospital is wasting money and resources. He's practically gone already. The audacity of her words made my stomach churn. She wasn't just meddling, she was dehumanizing my father, reducing his life to a line item in her twisted HOA agenda. Finally, another voice cut in, deep, firm, and commanding. This is your last warning. Lower your voice, or you will be removed from the premises entirely. That wasn't a hospital administrator anymore, that was the head of security. But Karen didn't back down. Remove me? For what? For trying to do what this so-called family won't. They are selfish, clinging to a hopeless situation. I'm the only one thinking about the bigger picture. Then came the sound that made every hair on the back of my neck stand up, the crash of something hitting the floor. Karen had either knocked something over or shoved a piece of equipment in her rage. Almost immediately, the radio on the guard's shoulder crackled. We've got a disturbance on ICU floor 3. Escalation in progress. Requesting immediate police assistance. Inside my father's room, the atmosphere was suffocating. My mom pressed a shaking hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Why is this happening? Why can't she just leave us alone? I pulled up another chair beside her, putting my arm around her shoulders. Because Karen doesn't know when to quit. But she's crossed a line this time. The police will deal with her. The nurse gave a reassuring nod. She won't be allowed back in here, I promise. The staff is already locking down visitor access for this wing. Still, the sounds of Karen's meltdown outside were impossible to ignore. I'll sue every single one of you, she shrieked. This is a conspiracy. You're trying to silence me, because you know I'm right. The community deserves better. Her words were a twisted mix of entitlement and delusion. And then, suddenly, there was silence. For a brief moment, I wondered if she had finally calmed down. But then I heard it, the clipped, firm tones of new voices. Police officers had arrived. I stepped toward the doorway, peeking through the small window in the ICU door. Down the hallway, I could see 2 uniformed officers confronting Karen. She was red-faced, her hair disheveled from her thrashing, and her hands waving dramatically as she tried to plead her case. I was just trying to help, she shouted. These people are selfish. They are draining the system. He doesn't even have a chance. One officer held up a hand. Calm down. You've disrupted a hospital unit, attempted to interfere with medical equipment, and ignored repeated lawful orders to leave. That's trespassing at minimum, and possibly much more serious. Karen's face twisted in fury. How dare you talk to me like a criminal? I am the president of the HOA. I will not be treated like this. But the officers weren't swayed. One reached for his handcuffs. The sight filled me with both relief and disbelief. Finally, someone was going to put an end to this madness. The sight of those police officers standing firm in the hospital corridor felt like the first breath of fresh air after being underwater too long. For hours, my family had endured Karen's harassment, her entitlement, and her sheer disregard for basic humanity. Now, it seemed like justice had finally arrived. Karen, however, didn't see it that way. Her face twisted into something between outrage and desperation. You can't arrest me. I'm acting in the best interest of everyone. These people are too emotional to make rational choices, and now you're enabling them. The officer holding the handcuffs didn't even flinch. His voice was calm but stern, the tone of someone who had seen every excuse in the book. This is your last chance. Either walk out peacefully, or you'll be escorted out in restraints. Karen's eyes darted around the hallway, searching for someone, anyone, to take her side. But all she found were horrified onlookers, nurses, doctors, and family members of other patients. Some shook their heads in disgust, others whispered to each other, clearly appalled. Still, Karen doubled down. "I have authority," she screeched, stomping her foot like a spoiled child. "I am the HOA president. This entire community falls under my watch, and if you don't let me handle this, the consequences will be on your heads." That was the last straw. The officer smoothly grabbed her wrist and twisted it behind her back. Karen yelped, thrashing violently as the other officer secured her other arm. The sound of metal handcuffs clicking shut echoed down the sterile hallway. "This is unlawful," she screamed, struggling against their grip. "You're all going to regret this. I'll call my lawyer. I'll sue this hospital into the ground." But her threats fell flat. Nobody was listening anymore. The officers began walking her toward the elevator, her voice growing fainter as she was dragged further away. Inside the ICU, the silence felt almost surreal. My mom let out a shaky breath she'd been holding in for what felt like hours. She leaned against me, whispering, "It's over. Thank God, it's finally over." The nurse gave a small, relieved smile. "She won't be coming back. We'll make sure of it. Her name is already being flagged in the system. She won't be allowed back into the hospital again." I sat back down beside my father, staring at his still face. His chest rose and fell with each breath from the ventilator, and for the first time that day, I felt like he was truly safe. "Dad," I whispered, "you won't believe what happened today. But don't worry, we've got your back. Nobody's going to hurt you." Later that evening, one of the officers returned to the ICU to check on us. He explained the situation calmly, his professional tone reassuring. "She's being charged with trespassing, disorderly conduct, and attempted interference with medical equipment," he said. "She won't be causing any more problems here." My mom shook his hand, tears of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you. Thank you for protecting my husband." The officer nodded respectfully. "We take these situations very seriously. Family members should never have to worry about someone interfering with their loved one's care." After he left, my mom and I sat in silence for a while, the weight of the day finally settling in. It was a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and disbelief. Word of what happened spread quickly, not just through the hospital, but back into our neighborhood. By the next morning, nearly everyone knew what Karen had done. Some neighbors were horrified, apologizing on behalf of the community. Others were furious, calling emergency meetings of the HOA board to discuss removing her from her position. Karen had always been a tyrant, but this incident crossed a line that no one could ignore. And in a strange way, her downfall became a rallying point. Neighbors who had once been too afraid to speak up against her finally found their voices. Complaints poured in, petitions circulated, and within weeks, Karen was officially stripped of her role in the HOA. For once, the community was free from her chokehold of control. Back at the hospital, my dad continued his fight. We didn't know what the future held, but at least we knew this: his fate would be decided by love, by family, and by medical professionals, not by a power-hungry HOA tyrant who thought she had the right to play God. As I held his hand, I whispered one last promise to him: "No matter what happens, Dad, we'll protect you. And no one, not even Karen, will ever take that away." And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace.